What's up everyone? John Rettinger from TechnoBuffalo here, back with another smartphone smackdown. This time it's two AT&T exclusives, the Apple iPhone 4 and RIM's Blackberry Torch. We're going to put these two head to head in a brutal 10-round series and see who comes out on top. The most difficult part of these smartphone smackdowns are picking the categories that are best going to encapsulate the phones. With the interest of brevity, these videos can get quite long, so picking really the categories that are both going to show the positive and negatives of each phone is the most difficult. So in this edition, we have 10 categories. We're going to cover call quality, reception, browser, email, UI and navigation, text input, speed, screens, apps, and battery life. If we were going to extend this a little bit farther, we would have covered multimedia and notifications, which we will touch on a bit in the UI aspect of the review. So let's go ahead and get started with probably the most important aspect of a phone, call quality. If the phone doesn't sound good, it's not going to be much use to you. Antenna gate aside, when you're making calls on the iPhone, assuming you have a case or you're not having antenna issues, the call quality has been very, very, very good. I've got a clear coat on my iPhone 4, so I've never really had any antenna issues since I put that on. Call quality has actually been outstanding. It's crisp, it's clear. I have no white noise or crackling on my end, and callers on the other end report no white noise or crackling on their end either. And volume is quite loud. On the Blackberry Torch, call quality was not as good as I would have expected. You guys know I test a lot of phones. I test a lot of AT&T phones. And it was not as good as some of the other AT&T phones that I've looked at, including the iPhone 4, which we're comparing it to, Samsung Captivate, and a few others. It was a little bit tinny. I had some popping noises on my end, and callers reported hearing the same thing. Oftentimes, I was asked if I was on speakerphone, even though I wasn't. That was infrequent, but it did happen about 10 to 50% of the calls that I make using the Blackberry Torch. Generally, I don't include call quality as part of these smartphone smackdowns because usually they're all very good. But this time, I thought it was really important to bring that up when talking about the Blackberry Torch. So round one, predictably, is going to go to the iPhone. The next most important feature of a phone is reception. Call quality aside, if you're not getting reception, it's not going to be that much use to you. The iPhone 4 reception is relatively strong. Generally, wherever I go in my area, I get about 3 bars to 4 bars of 3G service. On the Blackberry Torch, however, wherever I went, I had full bars of 3G service. If I take my iPhone forward and I go into my pantry and I shut the door, I generally drop down to edge. I ran the same test on a Blackberry Torch and I kept 4 bars of 3G. Reception and the radios that RIM put into the Torch are outstanding. If you're in a fringe 3G area, or maybe you get 1 or 2 bars, the Torch is going to be a great device for you because it seems to hold on to 3G bars and 3G service much better than other devices I've tested. So this round is going to go to the Blackberry Torch, bringing our total to 1 round apiece. So next, let's talk about browsing. Browsing is something that's very important to me. It's something that I use a lot on my phones. RIMs, while they've certainly had a ton of market share, it's been slowly declining. One of the big reasons for this decline has been RIM's browser. And RIM, of course, refers to Research in Motion, a company that makes Blackberries. The browser was quite simply atrocious on previous Blackberry devices, so OS 5.0 devices and older. It was a clumsy, awkward experience. RIM bought a company that makes a WebKit-based browser, and WebKit is the same technology that's used for the browser in the iPhone, in Android, and WebOS. So we're talking multi-touch, full, rich content is now finally on a Blackberry. So let's go ahead and see how both of them compare. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So we've got TechnoBuffalo loaded up on each, and we'll compare the speed test when we get to the speed round. Go ahead and jump into browser on both. And you can see that they look relatively similar. Scrolling on the iPhone, very smooth. I don't have any sort of, just hit a video. I don't have any sort of checkerboard pattern. It works very well. Certainly there's no flash content on the side, but it works quickly and that responds very well to the touch. Multi-touch zooming certainly works very well, and certainly Apple's bread and butter. You can zoom out. Of course, the browser will rotate with you. If you want to zoom into text, you can double tap to zoom. I'll go ahead and zoom right in and zoom right out. Now the Blackberry Torch boasts the same sort of feature set. You can go ahead and zoom right in, zoom right out. You can see that it is pretty smooth, but I do get that checkerboard pattern on the side. That's going to come into play when we talk about the speed side of things. But it does work very well. Actually, rendering tests have shown that the actual speed of the browser itself is faster on the Torch than it is on the iPhone. However, the Torch is limited by its processor, which again we'll mention in the speed. Clocked in a little over 600 megahertz, I believe around 620. The iPhone, we're looking at a 1 gigahertz. So I think that's really where we see some of that checkerboard pattern. We look at the browser, as you scroll around fast, you'll oftentimes will come into play. The browser here, as far as Blackberries go, is above and beyond anything else that Blackberry has had. I'm using the Torch as my daily driver now for about 4 days, and I've been relatively happy with the browser. You get the same double tap to zoom. It sort of takes a little bit longer to move out and get that checkerboard pattern again. So the iPhone certainly doesn't have Flash, nor does the Blackberry Torch. The iPhone relies very heavily on HTML5 for embedded media. That'll play YouTube videos in the browser and a lot of other content. The Torch doesn't have support for Flash or HTML5. So YouTube videos, you're going to be relying on the YouTube player, and you're not going to get a lot of sort of dynamic content. ESPN, for example, you can be able to play videos on the iPhone. You can't on the Blackberry Torch, sort of representative example of a lot of other sites. So the lack of HTML5 and sort of the hindrance of the processor are going to give the browsing edge to the iPhone. But I do want to say that I think that the Blackberry and RIM in particular are really on the right track with the browser. It does work well. It's pretty full featured, and browsing has been very smooth. So again, overall, I think RIM is on the right track. This is certainly worlds of improvement over what they have offered prior. This round is most definitely going to go to the iPhone 4. All right, now let's jump out of the browser and let's talk about email. Certainly, email is as important to me as mobile browsing, and probably to you as well. Oftentimes I'm in front of my computer and I rely on email to sort of get business done, as I'm sure most of you guys do as well. Email on the iPhone is something that I've lamented for quite a while. You don't have folder management. I can't really star things or mark them as favorites or flag them to do things. It's really pretty standard, just email. You get a message, you look at it, you can reply to it, and there isn't that much management in the email application. RIM and BlackBerry in particular is really their bread and butter has been email. They're just known for an outstanding email client, and that translates very clearly over to the Torch and sort of the touch screen manner that we've seen prior. So I've got tons of emails right here. You can go ahead and view through, scroll. It's very smooth and just works well. Email, this is a no-brainer. As far as being able to manage your email, reply, and sort of mark as favorites and deal with folder hierarchies, BlackBerry didn't get this in. Just a complete blowout goes to the Torch. If you ever used BlackBerry in the past, you know how good the email is. I don't think that there's much point in rehashing all the great features that go into BlackBerry email. Just say if email is important to you, BlackBerry is going to be very, very, very hard to beat. All right, so let's talk about now UI and navigation. Both user experiences are very, very, very different. The iPhone, the UI is very heavy on icons. So it's very icon based. As you can see, you can have some folders where you can jump in and view whatever you have, in this case games, and you can jump out and sort of go through folder after folder and icon after icon. Is really one of the major things that the iPhone does as far as working with it. Very finger friendly. You have to rely only on your finger for navigation. Settings and such are obviously very finger friendly as well. You can go ahead and view all your application settings, and you go through menu after menu to get to what you like. The user experience on the BlackBerry Torch is really unlike any other operating system. Usually these touchscreen operating systems have very similar interfaces. The Torch is relatively different. So you do have icons you can set as favorites. You can scroll through and view different categories. You have your all, favorites, media, and I went through and gave a whole tour of BlackBerry OS 6. You can go ahead and take a look at that later if you'd like. Downloads, and you have the capability to select what you want to show on your home screen, how much or how little. So if I want to have 2 rows of icons here, I can have 2 rows. If I want to have more, I can go ahead and change it to more. Let me jump back to all. I can make it show 3. I can make it show the whole screen 4. I can make it just show 1. I can make it show none if I want sort of that clean look. It gives you the capability to really customize it a bit more. It's got a great notification system as well. One of the things that I really don't like about the iPhone operating system, or iOS, is notifications. They pop up and interfere with what you're doing. You have to hit OK or cancel, and it freezes whatever you were working on. BlackBerry handles things very well here. You get a whole bunch of notifications on the top. It's sort of integrated with Twitter, Facebook, whatever you'd like. And you go ahead and tap them, and you can view all your messages, calendar, Facebook things, whatever you got. And it's sort of a very seamless experience. So both sort of offer unique ways to navigate through here. You don't have to just use your finger. You can actually navigate things with the touchpad here as well. So you can do, if you never want to use your finger, you don't really have to. Go ahead and navigate through, pick what you like, and just select it. So you can do the same thing as you would with your finger, and go ahead and hit back. Both are very finger friendly. If you've used a BlackBerry in the past, you're not going to be totally lost when you look at this. But it is going to be sort of a nice, a very, very nice evolutionary process of the BlackBerry operating system. And because you can use your finger, you can use the optical trackpad, a lot of ways to use the device that's best for you. This round is going to go to the BlackBerry Torch. You can customize the phone to really view it any way you like. And notification system is really a big deal for me. So when it comes to UI and navigation, that one is going to go to the Torch. All right, next let's talk about text input. Phone's only good if you can input text into it. If you want to go to a website, you want to compose an email, text message, how is that going to work for you? Let's go ahead and look at text entry on each. First, we'll go ahead and jump to the iPhone. I'll open up the Notes application, and I will go ahead and open up a new note and go ahead and see what this is going to look like. So text entry is a pretty standard affair. You've got a portrait or a keyboard. You go ahead and type, fairly well. It's got predictive correcting text, so it'll sort of predict what you're going to type. It works very well. I've gotten used to it. I'm generally an iPhone user. I'm using the Torch, however, as my daily phone. It works pretty well. Go ahead and show you a quick demonstration here. This is a test. You can see it works very well. Ethos a test. I made a mistake. It's pretty straightforward. It's become sort of industry standard now to have an on-screen keyboard. Let's jump over to the keyboard on the Torch, because there are a few ways to input text here. We go ahead and open up a new message so we can see sort of what this is going to look like. All right, so I've got a message here set up for me. You notice that I've got sort of the same looking thing. I've got an on-screen keyboard here. You saw a portrait, you also saw it rotate into landscape. So there you go. You can really have it either way you like. Now, screen size 3.2 on the Torch versus 3.5. So you're gonna have a bit of a cramped space while typing. But it does work pretty well. It's got a very nice auto correction and predictive text and spell check, much like the iPhone. You move your finger around, you can pick the letters. This is not a SurePress type device like we've seen with the Storms in the past. The screen does not click, so it just types like it would on any other capacitive screen phone. And it works pretty well. You can go ahead and type what you'd like, type out a quick message here on the screen, otherwise type it the other way. And it works pretty well. I'll do the same sort of quick test here. So this is a text, a little error, but it did work. Now the big deal with the BlackBerry and Torch in particular is this is not the only way to get text into the phone. Go ahead and slide that open. You're going to get a full sort of bold 9700 looking keyboard, which is one of the best keyboards around, and this one really is pretty true to RIM's design. Keyboard works very well. If you picked up a bold, you picked up a curve in the past, you'll know immediately how to type on this, and it works just well with other devices. There's not as much key throw because that has to be a bit thinner to be a slider, but it really does work very well. And I've gotten actually used to typing again on a full physical keyboard. I hadn't in the past. I'll show you again. So just about as fast, and now with a bit more accuracy. So text input is really good on the Torch, as you'd expect it to be on a BlackBerry device. So this round, as far as text input, is most definitely have to go to the Torch. You have an on-screen option if you don't want to slide it out and you want to type out a quick message or go to a quick website. But you also have the option to use a full QWERTY keyboard in a package that's not very thick. You see that it's still a pretty thin device. So this round is going to go to the BlackBerry Torch. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about speed. How fast are both of these guys? Well, the iPhone 4 is running a 1 gigahertz processor, which is relatively fast. The Torch is running a bit slower, 624 megahertz processor. And sometimes you do notice that difference. RIM does a great job at memory management, so multitasking and such. Oftentimes the phone is very, very, very quick. One of the big ways where I notice the speed difference is actually when it comes to browsing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about sort of speed of a few things. Let's go ahead and open up similar applications. Although this is not a comparative test for speed at all. This is two different applications, different memory managements. But just for a sort of an unscientific test, let's go ahead and open up Calendar on it. You can see how they work. So a little bit quicker there on the BlackBerry. Go ahead and open up Settings or Options on the BlackBerry. About the same. So you'll see that the Torch isn't a slow device. We really see the slowness. You saw it when I was looking at websites. When it comes to scrolling very quickly, sometimes you get that checkerboard pattern and all the content doesn't load. It's really where the big difference is. Let's talk about speed of the browser. Both of these are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. So let's go ahead and do a quick refresh and see how each of them work. We'll go ahead and go to BlackBerry, get it on a refresh. And I'll do the same thing here on the iPhone 4. I'll hit them both at the same time. And we are off on both of it again on the same Wi-Fi network. So it looks like the iPhone 4 is already showing content. The Torch is now just starting to. Haven't seen the text yet. There we go. On the Torch, the iPhone 4 is done, and the Torch is still loading. This is pretty representative of what we see with speed on the browser. OS speed, relatively even. Again, BlackBerry does such a nice job with memory management that it makes up for the slower processor. But really when it comes to browsing, you're definitely going to see a speed difference. And because of that, this round is going to go to the iPhone 4. Next, let's talk about screens, what you're going to look at the phone all the time. And this round may be a bit predictable for you, but something that's really important to notice. So the iPhone 4 has what's called a Retina display with a resolution of 640 by 960 on a 3.5-inch display. The Torch has a much lower 360 by 480 on a 3.2-inch display. And pictures and such generally do look a bit washed out. So go ahead and jump into media, for example, and I'll show you what I mean. Go ahead and open up a picture here. I've got one of my wife's family dog. You can see this was taken with just the regular camera. Pictures are very, very, very washed out because the resolution is so low. Again, if I could do more rounds, I probably would have covered camera, although both of these are 5-megapixel sensors, autofocus, LED flash, take very similar pictures. Things just look very washed out on the Torch. On the iPhone 4, things are very sharp and crisp. Looking at text on websites is another way we really see it. Let's go ahead and jump back to the browser here. On the iPhone 4, I can already read that text, even though it's very small and difficult to read, but you can make out that through letters. On the Torch here, it just looks like blurred shapes. You can't really see anything. When you start to zoom in, you'll notice that the text looks very crisp and clear, almost like it's seen on a newspaper. As you zoom in as far as it'll go. If I do the same thing here on the Torch, again, there's a little speed errors and some glitchy things happening. Go ahead and close out of that and keep zooming in. Go back to the text. You can definitely see a difference there and see the crispness of the screen of the iPhone 4. Ordinarily, I'm not that big into screen resolution. As long as it looks nice, I'm fine with it. But I really noticed a difference coming from the iPhone 4 to the Torch. So this round most definitely has to go to the iPhone 4. Next, let's talk about apps. Apps are some things that really make the phone or break the phone, depending on what you like. Certainly, there's not much need to go ahead and rehash all the details about Apple's App Store. It works very well. There really are apps for almost everything, and it's a very seamless experience if you're willing to live within Apple's walled garden, meaning you have to be in sort of the iTunes ecosystem. RIM with OS 6 and the Torch launched a new BlackBerry app world, which does work very well. You now have carrier billing support. You can view sort of things as you like. Ton of different applications, and it worked very well on the phone. Now, one of the nice things about RIM, or was in the past, is they had a pretty nice and growing catalog of applications that were used for their OS 5 devices. However, a lot of those apps do not work on OS 6, so things that you might be used to, particularly a lot of the Google apps, like Google Maps, are going to work very, very buggy if they work at all. So the apps that maybe you relied on very most, for instance, the Google Maps, you're not going to be able to use on the Torch. Now, certainly that will be fixed as time goes on, but right now, things that I needed to use are just broken on the Torch. So the apps round is going to go to the iPhone. So let's talk about the last thing that's important to me on a phone, and that's how long is it going to last me on a full day's charge. I use my phone quite a bit, heavy talking, heavy email, heavy web browsing. And oftentimes with the iPhone, I can generally get through a full day, and I was hoping for the same thing with the Torch. So on the iPhone, after a full day of charge, generally when I plug in it at night, and this is real world usage here, I'm not going to talk about milliamp hours or what Apple or RIM say the phones are going to work. This is how it actually works for me as a general user. Generally, I'm around 30% of battery life, maybe the 20 to 30 range, I suppose, on the iPhone 4. On the BlackBerry Torch, which does technically have a lower capacity battery, I'm at the 40 to 50% battery left. And that's certainly with BlackBerry's push system in place and such. Battery life on the Torch is fantastic. And again, that probably harkens back to RIM's memory management. It does a really, really, really good job of managing memory and subsequently managing the power that goes into the phone. So battery life definitely goes to the Torch. Alright, since this is a competition, we gotta go ahead and tally out the rounds in case you weren't keeping track at home. Call quality went to the iPhone. Reception swung to the BlackBerry. The iPhone struck back in browser. The BlackBerry swung again in email. UI and navigation went to the Torch. Text input also went with the BlackBerry. The iPhone took speed. The iPhone stuck around for screen, and it also took the apps category. And the BlackBerry got the last shot in with battery life, which means we have a score of 5-5. This smartphone smackdown ends in a tie, which really goes to the strengths of the Torch. If the Torch had a faster processor and browsing was improved a little bit with HTML5 capabilities, we'd have a runaway winner here. And I think that as time progresses and we see maybe a Torch 2 or other BlackBerry devices, a Torch Pro, whatever they might call it, we're going to see a very, very, very capable entry into the smartphone market from RIM. They've really done a very nice job sort of keeping up, or trying to play catch-up rather, of what some other manufacturers have done. So do you agree, disagree? Are the iPhone fans going to be upset? Are RIM faithful going to be upset? Curious to what you guys have to say. You think I was fair, unfair? I'd like to hear how I was looking to sort of improve my testing. Anyway, guys, I am John Rettinger from TechnoBuffalo. Be sure to check out the website for all your tech content and news. Create your own subblog, even monetize it and make some money. And talk to each other in a built-in social network. You can also check me out at Twitter for exclusive content at twitter.com/John4Lakers. I am John Rettinger, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.